I will be focusing my intervention today on the financialization of healthcare, and I will go deep into the role of the World Bank Group and the rise of health public-private partnerships. I hope that this follows quite nicely from Marco's presentation. I have 5 main points to share with you today, plus some references that I included in my last slide for you to continue the reading on some of these things. The first point, it's about the changing narratives and practices of development finance in a pre- and post-COVID-19 pandemic context. I will include some general reflections on that. Then I will get into the role of the World Bank Group as a key health market maker through the promotion of public-private partnerships. I will get into what PPPs are and the way in which they are promoted as a silver bullet for development and for health in particular. And I will expand on some of the impact that PPPs have for the right to health. And I will conclude with some remarks for you to take home. With regards to the changing narratives and practices of development finance in this pre- and post-COVID-19 context, I think that it's important to place ourselves in what has been the main trend over the last decade, because we have seen a very strong push for an increasing role of the private sector and of private finance in particular. So we have witnessed a private turn in development finance with significant implications for the universalization of health provision, right? There has been a strong narrative that got even stronger at the time of the agreement on the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, because this requires a massive investment. The needs are huge, and there is no doubt about that. But this narrative also comes with strong claims that public finance is not enough, right? And therefore, we need to fill in a huge gap, a huge financing gap that needs to be filled as a consequence with private finance, right? And that's why there is quite a lot of rhetoric that elevates the concept of leveraging, right? It's about using public money to leverage private finance. And this is the concept of de-risking that was mentioned by Marco and Nicoletta before, right? To be able to leverage, we need to lower the risk for private investment, for private investors. But what I want to emphasize in this first slide, so just right from the beginning, is that this is a political choice that reflects, on the one hand, the unwillingness of the international community to scale up and strengthen public financing of development, right? And there are many different things associated to that, including the bleeding of resources from the north, from the south to the north. So this has to be placed in context, right? I think that we should not take this official narrative as a given, or as this is a political choice. And this was very much present before COVID. When COVID came, it exposed its failures. So the dramatic impact of a trend that was very much present. And in February 2022, we came into a context of a polycrisis, right? So multiple crises interacting and making the context even more complex. While we have seen calls for reform and ambitious responses. Actions from multilateral development banks and the international community has fallen short and has even reinforced previous problematic narratives and practices, including a reliance on private finance. So the World Bank Group, I argue in a publication that was released in 2020, has sized the crisis as an opportunity to intensify its promotion of private finance for development and notably for health, despite the limited evidence of its benefits. Now we are in a context in which fiscal headroom and debt capacity of developing countries, it's even more limited. So this comes as a renewed rationale for further promoting private sector solutions. And I will get into that exactly now, because I would like to get into what's exactly the role that the World Bank Group has played over the years and is actually playing in the context of health. And this is quite a lot about this concept of health market maker, because the World Bank has been playing multiple and interconnecting roles in support of an agenda focused on increasing private sector participation in healthcare, particularly through public-private partnerships. But not only, right, as Marco also illustrated before. And this influence has taken different shapes, different forms. So to start with, the World Bank has used its finance through budget support throughout the years to promote market-led sectorial reforms in the health sector and to shape the national regulatory framework to attract private finance, right? This is one way of exerting its influence. The second one is that it has provided financial support for a specific healthcare private sector projects and PPPs in particular, both in-country projects and also global health public-private partnerships, and also to private equity funds that invest in the health sector, so they play the intermediary role. Number three, the World Bank has also influenced global health policy with managerial economic ideas and promoting a what works type of agenda by seeking to institutionalize its narrative around best practices. Right? The World Bank has been very active throughout the years on that. And lastly, the World Bank, IFC, the International Finance Corporation, has increasingly played a thought leadership role. They call it that way. They are very explicit, and they want to claim that they play this role by producing different outputs through which they highlight the relevance of private finance to deliver on healthcare objectives, and through these specific outputs, and also through the advisory service that the IFC delivers, the corporation has been progressively emphasized its work to create markets, right? It's work upstream, they call it that way. It's because it's not at the project level, it's at the level of creating markets for these projects to happen later on, right? And these have to be profitable projects. They don't want to look for other projects, right? They are looking for projects that are profitable projects for the private sector to invest. And I would like to give an example. The case of Kenya, it's a very relevant example to look at, because the promotion and the activity of the bank has been very explicit through all these different channels that I have highlighted. The promotion of increased private participation in healthcare match private actors' interest in expanding their role in Kenya healthcare, in some cases with the support of donor agencies, right? In the case of the Netherlands, in the case of the US, and WEMOS has also been doing quite a lot of very interesting research on the case of Kenya. And there are many other country cases that follow the same pattern, right? So there is a market that has been created for health, and there are a lot of companies interested in into these business opportunities. So the World Bank, as I argued at the beginning, has worked as a health market maker and facilitator of financialization of healthcare, which has not changed after the COVID-19 pandemic. And there are some research that points into that specific feature, right? So after analyzing the work of the World Bank Group, let's get into what public-private partnerships actually are and why they have been so instrumental of this specific trend, right? So public-private partnerships are being promoted as the financing tool that will deliver infrastructure and social services, including healthcare, because there is an assumption that PPPs might help overcome some key challenges, including insufficient funds for planning and project selection. So we are in front of an arrangement in which private sector companies replace the state as the provider of traditional public services, including healthcare, and where the public and the private sector agree by signing on a very long-term contract. We are talking about 20, 30 years sometimes. They agree in this contract on how to distribute the risk associated with the project, right? This is the definition of what a PPP is, right? But it's very important that we see the promotion of PPPs as a wedge, right? In how the policy space around public service provision is being redefined with important repercussions over and above their sometimes relatively small, immediate financial significance. And by this, I mean, it's not just about the number of PPP projects or the amount of money that it's the most significant thing to look at when we see the role of the bank, the promotion of PPPs, and how they are elevated as a silver bullet, right? It's everything that comes with this work that I mentioned before in terms of creating markets and making health something that can be purchased, right? And something that also can be traded. And here it comes the concept of financialization and how everything it's being financialized. So effort to promote PPPs point to clear attempt to increase the involvement of private finance in development and have resulted in concrete changes in how laws, policies, and development and sectorial plans are designed. So in my academic life and also with my civil society hat, I have been doing some research on public-private partnerships. Eurodad coordinated 2 specific reports with case studies on public-private partnerships, some of them covering the health sector. And that's why we have some key findings to share. The main one is, and this is also very much reflected in the academic literature on PPPs, and it's that they are, or that they come with high fiscal and human costs, right? All too often PPPs come at a very high cost for the public purse and an excessive level of risk for the public sector. Right? There are costs that increase there are costs that are hidden costs and that materialize for different reasons, and then the cost of a particular project, it's way more expensive than initially anticipated. This has actually resulted in a very questionable diversion of public resources. PPPs in the health sector introduce commercial imperatives in the delivery of healthcare that can actually undermine the right to health. Women have often suffered the most, and the research that Nicoletta mentioned at the very beginning that was released by Oxfam just last week point to some of the very dramatic experiences that women have had to deal with when it comes to hospitals, private for-profit hospitals, some of them PPP hospitals as well. So the reliance on health PPPs risk undermining progress on universal health coverage altogether, as PPPs are likely to worsen people's access to essential health services. And I would also argue that PPPs constitute not only privatized healthcare, but financialized healthcare. In practice, extending the reach of financial private actors, because some of them intervene in the consortiums that manage PPP hospitals or projects, and they certainly play a very important role in as investors in these projects. This translates into a reality where financial players are very powerful enough to influence the types of healthcare available to people in need. Through the process of financialization, healthcare becomes another sphere through which global finance can extend its value capture with significant implications for inequalities. And here I will conclude with some remarks in relation to the role of PPPs and the promotion of PPPs in this specific context, in particular by the World Bank Group. So the promotion of PPPs in healthcare contributes to increasing the exposure of national healthcare systems to globalized finance. It is critical to strengthen public health systems and remove financial barriers to accessing healthcare, including the removal of health user fees. It's very important, as I stressed at the very beginning, to think about what other choices of financing healthcare are available. Public services need to be financed with domestic resources. There is a very strong need for international concessional public finance and for systemic solutions to address some of the problems that undermine developing countries' ability to get the resources that they actually need, right? There is a need for rich countries to deliver on their aid commitments. There is a need to find sustainable solutions to address debt problems. There is also a need to fight illicit financial flows. And there is a need to get a meaningful reform of the international financial architecture, including the governance of the World Bank and the IMF, among many other things that are related to that. So I will conclude just by saying that in the wake of the multiple and interconnected crises, the promotion of PPPs is a false solution. The World Bank plays a very problematic role in promoting that agenda, and this needs to be challenged with a strong call for public services. Thank you very much. And this is the last slide with some academic references that I can, or civil society reference that I can also share with you and the organizers later. Thank you very much.